special off-camera edition. Yes, I'm here. You can't see me now. I talk to my next guests. They're from the Blue Moon Consulting Group. Welcome, you guys. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are
Thank
you?
you. Glad to be here.
Now, Mr. Simon, let's start with you. Let's give us your names real quickly from left to right.
Okay, Simon Barker, Managing Partner, Blue Moon.
Pam Ruskowski, the law enforcement consultant, Blue Moon.
Bob Wilkerson, Senior Advisor for Crisis Management.
Lynn Tierney, Senior Advisor and also former Deputy Commissioner of the Fire Department in New York.
Oh, wow, fantastic. Now, Simon, why are you guys named Blue Moon? What do you guys do?
So we are a crisis management consultancy, and everyone thinks crises don't happen very often, or if they think they do happen, it won't happen to them. Our view very much is that, like a blue moon, you think they're infrequent, but actually they happen all the time, and they're quite predictable. So if you think about it proactively, you can anticipate and prepare for crisis. So that's why we're called Blue Moon Consulting Group.
I like it. There's a lot of things. Oh, hold on, I gotta change my mic. I'll fix it in post. Test, 1, 2, 3.
Do it again.
Test.
You're still soft.
Let's stop it. I'm doing it.
Start over.
Gaga with your host, Chuck Carroll, SecurityGuideTV.com. My next contestants from Blue Moon Consulting. Left to right, what's your name, sir?
Simon.
And look, next.
Pam Ruskowski.
Bob.
Lynn Tierney.
And you guys are with Blue Moon Consulting, and why the name? What do you guys do?
So we are a crisis management consultancy, and most people think crises aren't going to happen, or if they do happen, they're not going to happen to them. And so blue moon, the idea of a blue moon is you think, oh, it's never going to happen, right? But actually blue moons are quite frequent and they're quite predictable. And so our view is that if you pay attention, you can certainly anticipate and prepare for a crisis. So that's why we're called Blue Moon
I
Consulting.
agree 100%. I mean, I'm coming from law enforcement, and you could see it coming.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And most people said, well, let's wait till it gets here.
Yeah.
So I get where that's coming from. So why is it important to manage these responses ahead of time?
There's a number of things that need to happen, but I think what we see in our approach with Pam here from law enforcement, emergency management, and crisis communications is when you're actually in a crisis, there's so many things that happen, it's really hard to coordinate. And individual sort of components at a corporation may work, so security may be great, but leadership may not be connected, and how do you actually get these things to work together? So our view very much is, let's make sure that we've got a holistic view of the risk, that we're planning and responding not just to what have happened, but what it means, right? What else is going to impact the organization because of the underlying event? And that really requires this very much coordinated approach across disciplines, across functions. It's not just the emergency managers can do it, it's not just security management can do it. Everyone has a specific role, but it all has to work together in a seamless way. Otherwise, our basic proposition is it's always the perception of the response that does the most damage. It's not what happened. So if something bad happened but you respond to it well, effective crisis management,
Right.
you can come out of it okay. And it's that coordination piece that really we feel is critical.
It is all about the optics. Now,
Yeah.
Pam, how does this apply to workplace violence?
Workplace violence obviously is something that we're all concerned about today, and it's a great example of these principles. It starts with leadership and making security, preparation, response part of the corporate culture. We look at the phases of response and preparation for workplace violence. Begins with physical security of our buildings, our hiring processes, background checks. We move on to early warning systems, looking at policies that are necessary to raise issues early on, supervisor training, employee training, and then our emergency planning and processes. Again, leadership is necessary to pull it all together so that the organization moves forward and we're not siloed. Siloed responses don't work in this situation.
So, Bob, what are some of the challenges that any organization might look?
Well, I think there are three key issues that come up. First is understanding the risk, having a realistic look at the risk. We spend so much time on prevention and mitigation of the risk that sometimes we convince ourselves it's not going to happen.
Well, and that goes back to defining the risk as well. We don't give risk a proper definition.
Yes. And then the second key issue, I think, is the question of staffing. You need to provide that crisis management structure with a strong management team, but at the same time, you have to continue to manage the organization's activities. So you, in essence, have to do two things at one time. Finally, is finding a way to give that team experience. How do we find a way so that things that only happen once in a blue moon, they actually gain experience early on and they're ready for the first time that it happens?
So, Lynn, what are the main communication challenges in a crisis?
Well, I think we've walked into situations where the first order that goes out is get the press office up here. We need a press release to fix this thing up. A press release is not going to fix most of these things up. And we need to have a communications office that's prepared, that's drilled. And we need to have people understand the value of two-way communication, the value of listening, and to have the right team there and the right people at the table. You can't have somebody at the table just because they have the appropriate rank. They need to be adding something to the discussion. You need to listen to it. And you know, it's not a sin to admit that you made a mistake. And when you first go out with your first statement, you might be able to say, this is what we've seen, this is what we've done about it, this is what we're going to do in the future, and we're presenting a situation where we're going to be better off than we were before. And that's the kind of stuff that we go through with organizations when we walk in. We see where they are on that and what resources they have, and we'll provide more resources if need be.
So, Simon, back in the day at the studios, we had pretty good budget. We were on top of these things, but we still only did a management drill once a year. And I always felt that just because I came in and sat at my desk with a nameplate on it, I wasn't sure I was going to perform like I should.
Yeah.
Because what are we doing now to change that model? Are we doing these things every quarter? Are we doing it once a month? How are we getting people to practice more? Because that's a budget issue.
It's a budget issue, but I think even more importantly, it's a time issue. I think
that's true.
Certainly executives are like, we can't get these things scheduled, or they'll say, this is very important and we have half an hour to do it.
Right.
So it really is getting that time. I think one of the things that we're suggesting more and people are adopting, rather than the big 4-6 hour sort of crisis functional drill, is much more frequent, quarterly, issues-focused drills, especially for management, right? And maybe they're spending 90 minutes thinking about something. But I think one of the key things that we've realized is that as most corporations are pretty well prepared for the physical emergency, the fire, to some degree the active shooter, earthquake, where it all falls apart are issues like sexual assault, which or fraud, or all these sort of scandals, or product recall, issues that really hit the brand and the reputation, and there may not be a physical response required, but it still has that same level of scrutiny.
Well, that's true, doesn't it? Yeah.
And it's testing those kind of risks and issues that most organizations don't do, that we like to do.
Now, I understand you guys have a $15K consulting giveaway. I'm intrigued. What is that?
So, yes, we do. This is our first time here. We're very excited to be here. We have a great team. We're going to be at, what is our booth?
2393.
2393. And if you are responsible for a crisis management program or preparedness program, come down, talk to us, but we are giving away $15,000 of consulting services. I think it's the best giveaway of anyone at this particular show.
It sounds like it.
And we will do, that's going to be enough for a really pretty good some type of exercise. We'll work with whoever wins to tailor it to their risks, the team that would be testing. And so that is, or if you don't want to do an exercise, there are plenty of other preparedness services that we do. But our view is, and we have all been in the trenches working on real crises, that these exercises, we don't like to sugarcoat. We like to make them challenging. We like to make it more like a crisis than just a going through the motions. If you're ready for that, then we're ready for you. And come down and register, and you can always hire us. You don't have to win, but but certainly that's what we thought would be good, just so people start to know who we are.
So 2393.
2393.
I believe so. Next, opposite the Diamond Club.
All right, excellent.
That's where we're at.
Simon, Pam, Bob, and Lynn, BlueBootConsultingGroup.com. Check them out on the floor here. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll be back in a minute here at GSX 2019, live from Chicago.
Thank you.
Thank you.